The night was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into bones and makes hunger burn sharper. On the busy street outside a luxurious restaurant, Anna stood with trembling hands clutching the strap of her worn-out bag. Her shoes had holes at the toes, her coat was too thin for the season, and her stomach growled so loudly she feared people walking past might hear. She hadn't eaten properly in 3 days, surviving only on scraps she could find. Yet tonight, as she watched the elegant guests stepping in and out of the restaurant, her pride waged war with her desperation. She had never begged before. She had always told herself she would find work, she would fight, she would endure, but her body was weakening, and the ache in her stomach was unbearable. Inside, Richard Hale, the city's most successful millionaire, sat alone at a corner table. He was the kind of man newspapers wrote about, the one people whispered about in awe and envy. Sharp in his navy suit, his dark hair sprinkled with gray, Richard carried himself with the air of a man who had seen too much, gained too much, and perhaps lost even more. His dinner sat half-eaten before him, untouched for the last 15 minutes as his mind wandered to the empty mansion he would return to, the silence of a house where laughter no longer lived. His late wife's absence haunted him still, and his daughter, estranged for years, had stopped visiting. His wealth could buy him anything except the warmth he secretly craved. As he pushed away his plate, preparing to leave, a shadow fell across his table. He looked up startled and saw her. She was thin, her face pale but framed by eyes that glimmered like forgotten stars. She swallowed hard, her lips trembling as she whispered words that silenced the room. May I have your leftovers, sir?" The restaurant fell still. Forks paused mid-air, conversations hushed, waiters exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some diners sneered in disgust, others rolled their eyes. But Richard's gaze locked onto hers, and in that instant something within him shifted. He didn't see a beggar. He saw a soul fighting to hold on to dignity, a woman worn down by life yet unbroken. Her voice carried shame, but her eyes carried defiance, the kind of quiet strength only those who had endured suffering knew. He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit," he said simply. The young woman froze. She hadn't expected kindness, not here, not from him. I didn't mean to disturb. I said sit." His tone was firm but not unkind. She obeyed hesitantly, her hands twisting in her lap. A waiter approached, ready to clear the plate, but Richard raised his hand. "Bring her a meal, fresh, and don't bring the bill to her. It's mine." The waiter blinked, nodded, and hurried away. The girl's face flushed. "I didn't mean for you to buy me anything," she said, her voice cracking. "Just the scraps would have been enough." Richard leaned forward, studying her. "You deserve more than scraps." When the food arrived, steaming and rich with aroma, tears filled her eyes. She whispered a thank you, then began eating cautiously, almost as if afraid someone might snatch it away. Bite by bite, she regained some color in her cheeks. Between mouthfuls, she spoke her name, Anna, and her story spilled out in fragments. She had once been a student with dreams of becoming a teacher, but after losing her parents in an accident, her world crumbled. Debts consumed what little she had, and with no family to turn to, she slipped into poverty. She worked odd jobs when she could, but they barely covered rent. Tonight she had nothing left. Richard listened silently, moved in a way he hadn't been in years. For decades, people around him had wanted his money, his influence, his connections. But here sat a woman who wanted only survival. No schemes, no lies, just food to quiet her hunger. Her honesty pierced him like nothing else had before. He could have ended it there, paid her bill, sent her on her way. But he didn't. Something about Anna wouldn't let him. As she finished her meal, he found himself asking questions not out of politeness but genuine interest. And she answered shyly at first, then with surprising candor. She told him about the books she used to love, the little joys she missed, the hope she still clung to even when life tried to crush her. And for the first time in years, Richard smiled. Not the rehearsed smile for cameras, but a real one. That night, when she left the restaurant, her heart carried more than food. It carried the memory of a man who had seen her as human, not invisible. And Richard, returning to his empty mansion, realized the silence wasn't as suffocating as before, because now it was filled with thoughts of her. The days that followed changed both their lives. Richard began to look for Anna deliberately. He arranged for her to meet him again, not at fancy restaurants this time, but at small cafes, quiet parks, places where she felt less out of place. Each time he made sure she had enough to eat, enough to carry with her, but more importantly, he gave her something she had long forgotten: conversation, laughter, warmth. Anna remained cautious. She couldn't understand why a man of his stature would bother with her. She told herself it was pity, charity, a passing act of kindness he would soon forget. But he kept coming back. Slowly, she let her guard down. She began telling him about her past dreams, about the little girl she once was who wanted to make the world brighter. She spoke of loneliness, of the nights she cried herself to sleep, and Richard listened with an intensity that made her feel, for once, like her voice mattered. He, in turn, opened up to her. He spoke of his late wife, the emptiness her loss had left, the estrangement with his daughter Emily, the hollowness of wealth. Anna listened not as a journalist would, seeking a story, but as a friend, with compassion in her eyes. Slowly, his heart, walled up for so long, began to soften. It was Anna who met Emily first by accident. Richard had invited Anna to his mansion one evening, insisting she should no longer sleep on the streets. She resisted at first, but eventually agreed, though with unease. She entered the sprawling halls with wide eyes, feeling out of place in every way. That's when Emily, his daughter, walked in. At first, Emily's face hardened. She assumed Anna was another woman trying to take advantage of her father's fortune. But Anna's humility disarmed her. She didn't flaunt, she didn't boast. She spoke softly, offering to help Emily with something as simple as setting the table. Later, when Richard stepped out of the room, Emily asked, "What do you want from him?" Anna shook her head. "Nothing. He gave me food when I had none. He gave me kindness when I had forgotten it existed. That's more than enough." Emily studied her long and hard, and for the first time she believed someone wasn't after her father's wealth. Slowly, she too began to warm to Anna. Time passed, and what began as a simple act of charity blossomed into something deeper. Richard and Anna grew inseparable. He saw in her the life he had lost, the joy he thought would never return. She saw in him not a millionaire, but a man who had given her dignity when the world had stripped it away. But not everyone approved. Rumors spread. The media whispered of scandal. Some business associates mocked Richard, saying he had lost his mind, that a beggar had ensnared him. Old acquaintances of Anna sneered, calling her a gold digger. But none of it mattered to him. He dismissed their judgment with the wave of his hand. One evening, at a grand gala filled with the city's elite, Richard stood at the podium, expected to announce another empire-expanding project. Instead, he shocked the audience. With Anna standing nervously at his side, he began speaking of humanity, of second chances, of how true wealth was not measured in money but in love and kindness. And then, to the astonishment of all, he turned to her. "Anna," he said, his voice steady though his heart pounded, "the night you asked me for my leftovers, I realized how much of my life had been wasted. I had everything, but I was empty. You filled that emptiness with hope. You reminded me of what matters most, and I don't want to live another day without you. Will you marry me?" The hall gasped. Some laughed in disbelief, others gawked in envy. Cameras flashed. But in that moment, all Anna saw was Richard, kneeling, holding out a velvet box, his eyes filled with sincerity. Her tears spilled as she shook her head slightly. "Richard, I'm not worthy of this. I'm no one. Just a girl who begged for scraps." He took her hand and pressed it to his lips. "You are not no one. You are everything." The room erupted in applause as she whispered the word that sealed their fate. "Yes." Emily rushed forward, tears streaming, and embraced them both. And in that moment, a family was reborn, not of wealth or power, but of love, compassion, and second chances. From that night forward, the story of Anna and Richard spread far and wide, not as scandal but as legend. It was told in whispers across the city, then in headlines across the nation. How a young woman asking for leftovers found not just a meal, but a miracle. She was no longer the girl at the door of the restaurant. She became the woman who reminded a lonely millionaire and the world that love and kindness can change everything.